This is Zettelkast, brought to you by readers, writers, thinkers, and teachers from LiLLiPub, along with our partners in thought, our Zettelkastens. In this show, we share discoveries that our Zettelkastens have shown us.
There you go.
And compare notes on how we're using this marvelous invention in our creative work. Thank you for joining us.
All right, Brooke, let's do it again.
All right.
Episode 82, Pushing the Boundaries.
Hello, and welcome to the Zettelcast. This is episode number 82, and it will be called Pushing the Boundaries. And what I wanted to talk about in this episode is we all know that Zettelkasten cards are made up of text, usually. We write things down and we file them, and most of what we're writing about is also text, things from books or articles. But we do reference videos, we reference audiobooks or other audio sounds. We can reference experiences that we've had that we write about. So I'm wondering, can we push the boundaries? Can we add non-text elements to our Zettelkasten? Does anybody have any experience with that? And how has it worked out? What purposes do you use these non-text things for? And can we imagine, maybe not in our world, but perhaps in the Roanoke world, even including things that aren't visual, that might be audio or maybe video somehow in a card? Might not really be possible in our world, although maybe someone will come up with some ideas, but in Roanoke, who knows? So with that preamble, who would like to share first?
Okay. I'll go ahead and go because I'm probably off the beaten track compared to what you were talking about. When I first saw this, I said, I have exactly in all 8 drawers of Zeke, 3, count them 1, 2, 3, cards that are not just text. One of them was an image, an icon image that Deb Hart sent me, where you're firing off a rocket. And one of them was an image of a Zettelkaster who just does astounding, visually delightful cards and communicates with himself primarily visually. And the third one was a quote that meant a lot to me. So I had put a little, viney, flowery border on it, and for a while it sat on my desk in front of me. And when I stopped looking at it anymore, I gave it a number and filed it. So 3, 1, 2, 3. However, I make extensive use of images in my auxiliaries. And so I simply pulled a few of them. This is where I use images. I'm not a particularly visual person, so a large part for me in creating these visuals, a large part of it has to do with my efforts to teach myself to think visually. So they almost function as, I would say almost function like drill cards for me, flashcards to help remember things. And of late, I've been working with the image of the flower for the character traits and assigning symbols for each of the character traits and how the combinations speak a language, which we've talked about trying to incorporate into the Roanoke world. So these I do think will come over into the Roanoke world, but since it's not a language that speaks to me, for the most part, these are not on my Zettelkasten cards. The exception is as I work through these flower images, some of these guys are showing up in my Zettelkasten. But they have been enormous fun. I've especially enjoyed essay architecture symbols that Michael Dean has shared with us in his book on essay architecture. And I've used these as symbols that prompt my thinking. And actually what I used these for was but it was my first method of discursive meditation, trying to keep placeholders so that I could navigate in my mind. I was having trouble navigating the tree, but because the Michael Dean structure was three deep nested of threes, it was a real easy tree structure to follow. And I found that if I memorized the symbol, I could use the symbol to just the picture itself to store an idea that was completely unrelated to it, and it didn't interfere
Nice.
with the idea. But yet, because I knew the order of these symbols so well, I could use it to navigate. So I made use of the fact that the symbol did not speak to me, so that I could put something utterly unrelated on it. It just came back to me.
Oh,
And so I'm kind of weird.
well, I could go. I have stuff that I've talked about before, and then a new experiment. So stuff I've talked about before is that I keep little diagrams of memory palaces.
Ah,
And I don't always create the full diagram of the memory palace at the time that what I do is, first of all, I use Anthony Metivier's advice, which is dig your wells before you're thirsty, which is in your free time, cast about your experience of walking around in the world or memories that you've had of friendships and so on, where there are places you've been and you can alphabetize them. So this is Staples. And I had a reason. And why is it useful to alphabetize? Because there was something that I wanted to memorize, which are the categories of the learning system that, again, Anthony Metivier, this is just a coincidence, recently talked about in his podcast. And S for system, Staples, is just easy. Um, and so Staples is a very big place. And I didn't bother to annotate all the various places that I might want to go there as a memory palace until I knew I needed 12. And so I wasn't cramming things in, and I wasn't wasting the time. So that's one. The second one I've talked about is using Zotero um, as essentially a much better bookmarking system, better for me, because it can save URLs, it can save snapshots of websites, it can save full PDF contents of something. I mostly use it for URLs of places where you go to the place and that's where you want to read the thing. If it's actually an ebook or something, I would purchase it. But that's useful for some of the multimedia stuff. So I have a ton of YouTube videos, for example, that I don't remember the name of it, but I'll have keywords for it. And the keyword system that I use is similar to, well, if I'm searching just for the text of the title and the description of a YouTube video, it's going to come up really quickly. But I also use the same um, way of creating um, a bib note reference to one of those URLs. So if it were a book by Anthony Metivier, it would be b.am underscore and then something about the title. If it's one of his videos, it's r.am. And then I can create BibNote cards from that. It's just a way to get to it. And if I see something r dot, I know, okay, I can go um, get to it that way. I've talked about that before, and I didn't invent that at all. I got it from the Antoinette Zettelkasten book by Scott P. Shepard. He shows how to do it, and I've followed him like a slave, and it worked great. So those are my two things that I have, in fact, talked about a little bit on the podcast before. The newer thing is an experiment. Um, it began when here's a little bit of a backstory for the experiment, because I think that Deb and other people who watch this um, podcast, like me, are newer to the world of writing fiction.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that I wanted to do, I see that people who are more experienced with writing fiction have a sense of how long, in terms of the number of words, something is likely to be.
Mhm.
And they have already got a sense of how many words on average they do write in a given day of writing. And it's that first bit that I didn't have a sense of. And having written some stuff and having gotten to a point where, all right, I'll use that as an example in order to figure out how many words go with the Zettelkasten cards that prompted the writing. So if I'm going to be writing from Zettelkasten cards, and I know, okay, I'm coming up on this scene. One, how many cards does it usually take for a scene to feel satisfying? And how many words per card do I tend to end up writing? Now, it's really, really not exact. I'm still just trying to get a rule of thumb. But that's what I did. I took three of my scenes that I feel are representative of my best work, and I broke it down in terms of um, all the cards that went into that writing. I also added to that all the cards that came out of that writing, because that's part of my process. Being a puzzler, I tend to have about 2/3 of my uh, scene somewhat planned out in the cards, and a full third of it I discover while I'm writing. I didn't know that was going to happen. And so that's good to know. And all right, so what does this have to do with colors or anything else? It has to do with colors because now, so that's how this came about. And now there's a book that I read back in 2021 that I thought it was very inspirational to me. It's called Living Your Unlived Life by Robert A. Johnson. It's a very short and profound book. And in that book, he has like a little quiz that you take, and it's in the appendix of the book. And at the end of the that quiz, you have kind of gotten it's called your unlived life inventory.
Mhm.
And it's breaking life down into 4 dimensions: inner, outer, deeper, greater.
Hmm.
So the inner dimension is relating to your feelings about yourself and your personal relationships. The outer is your comfort and effectiveness in doing things in the world. Your deeper dimension is relating to intuitive and creative experiences that feel as though they're not in your control. And the greater dimension is relating to your core values and aspirations of your higher self. Each of these is in some way represented throughout the Roanoke story that I'm writing. And so what I ended up doing is looking at it kind of, this is an analysis that I will not necessarily do to this level all the time. But I looked at what I'd written, and I tagged the cards. Well, this was really about inner. This was about inner and outer. This was about Deeper, this was about greater. In order to get a sense in the scene, what's the balance of these things? And right now, I'm mostly focused on Act One. And so inner and outer are very important. Is who are these people and what do they care about? And what's this world they're living in? But there need to be some things that are like whispers and hints and so on of what they are in the process of discovering. So I mapped the inner, outer, deeper, and greater to the story world. So inner is everything where I'm writing about something that goes on in the thou, either the thou through the link or the thou, you, I, thou relationship. And there are characters who have an I, thou relationship with their link. And Jenna is one of those. She and her link are pals. So there's the inner is the thou, outer is the ye of the link and the experience out in the world. Deeper, I've got the experience of wonder. And greater is the experience of being called. And what I'm translating that to, when I read Johnson's book, I just created a color coding thing for the books that I'm reading. And I use little sticky things like, okay, this book is about inner and outer. This book gets into deeper. And so I use those color codings and, happily they're primary colors, except for one secondary color. And so I've got blue for inner, yellow for outer, green for deeper, red for greater. And if I color code the top of cards, then I know what kind of weight is that card carrying. And knowing that, for example, this thing is doing inner, outer, and deeper. And knowing that, it's carrying a lot of weight. It's probably going to need a lot of words. So that's what I'm doing. It's a brand new experiment, but it feels like a way to have a little bit more tools in my belt for some of these things that were only happening intuitively. I feel certain they will still happen intuitively, but this gives me a way of sitting down in front of a blank page and not feeling like, oh my God, is this going to take me 2 weeks? Is it going to take me a day? Don't know. And there you have it.
Inspiring. Thank you.
Yeah. It's called corralling it,
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I was thinking about this, and I'm thinking about the assignment, to be clear. Okay. Thinking about the assignment, and up pops my character. Her name is Sorcha, Sorcha, Sorcha. And Sorcha is a person who has been traumatized. So here I am with trauma again. I don't know what there is about me and trauma, but I think about trauma. What happens to people who have been traumatized? And this particular character has something called anterograde amnesia. And anterograde amnesia basically means she doesn't carry herself from day to day. She forgets. She forgets. And so at the same time, she rebels against the idea that was promoted by that movie, 500 Mornings or something, another it was called. She says she refuses to have a journal because it's like, no. I'm not doing it. So how is continuity defined for such an individual? And she has decided that she'll do roles and color. And so I wrote a thing that ended up to be about it ended up to be seven pages, which I will not read here. Not read here because this is not for that. But I did ask myself a question. What does a non-text element actually earn? When does a non-text element actually earn its place in an analog Zettelkasten? When? So in the window that we had to think about it, I came up with what I'm calling the 4 RAYs, R-E, RAY, because it's retrieve, recognize, relate, and respond. Okay, so each one of those words begins with R-E. So it's the 4 RAYs. And so retrieve means get it back. Recognize means to know it. Relate means to link it. And respond means to use it. Right? So if you got drawings or diagrams or color coding or icons or layouts, they're worth considering if they help me do one of those 4 things. So like a color earns its place when it consistently signals something useful. A diagram earns its place when it reveals relation better than sentences alone, right? And a sketch earns its place when it catches the thought in the form that it first arrived.
Oh.
Okay, so and I'm also intrigued by the idea of oral tags, rhythm, gestures, touch, timing, and context. Right, so altogether, my current thought is the Zettelkasten may need to preserve not only what I know, but also the form in which knowing first arrived. Whether verbal, visual, rhythmic, spatial, or bodily. Right, so that's all I got on that.
And so are you using your character of Sorcha to kind of be a laboratory for your own thoughts about how you would use this for yourself?
Right.
Yeah.
I am because she wakes up and she sees all these diagrams and pictures and things on her wall and this color coding, which she woke up, did her daily cleansing ritual, and then went to the kitchen to pull out a spoon to stir some coffee that she was making, that she was going to make, and saw instead this drawer full of index cards. Index cards with big fat markers. There were markers in this drawer, right? And she was awed by how obsessively neat this drawer was. And so she recognized that one of a phrase that came to mind when I was writing the story is that someone who knew her intimately enough to share skin with had done this. And so maybe that meant she should pay attention, to see what this was all about. So yeah, I'm in this story trying to figure this out. Yes.
Cool.
To answer your question. Yes.
I love it.
Yeah.
Another Zettelkasten shows up. Who thought it? Kitchen drawer Zettelkasten. I have some drawers in my kitchen.
Yeah. Yeah. So her name is Sorka Lathia. Now, where this name came from, I have no clue. But it's so musical. Sorka Lathia. I don't know.
From your muse, of course.
It came from it came from, of course, it came from my muse, everything,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
You
It-
can't
it-
expect
it-
your muse to reveal all its secrets.
no, she doesn't tell me stuff. She just says, "Here, take this." Thank you. Thank you. You know, so
Cool. I have quite a lot of different ways that I use non-text elements. Um, I think the first thing I started with was doing diagrams for things, as Deb put it, that it makes more sense. It's more informative to have a diagram than text. More efficient too. Um, a diagram can often explain the relationships that it would take pages and pages to maybe not even explain as well in text. So here's just a quick example of a diagram. Um, this was from working with the Lillian questions when I was first getting started with them. And I was trying to come up with some images for these. This was even before I had come up with the symbols. But I wanted some images, some diagrams to help explain the different parts of the questions. And so this was just me working it out on paper at the time. But I also copy over diagrams that might be given in a book if they're relevant. But of course, those led to the icons, like Kathleen had mentioned, and I use those pretty extensively now. I've come up with a whole set. There's the ones that go with Ramon Lull, but I've got some that are just for me. And I tend to make icons for ideas that I want to revisit over and over again. And like I might find myself, if I'm reading a book, I'm like, oh, here's a reference that relates to this idea. And really all I want to do is say, oh, this relates to this idea. Um, and so that's not really much of a bib note. It doesn't really add anything. It's just noting it. So now I just use these icons for those pages. And I also put icons at the top of cards that are related. If I've got a card that explicates that idea in some way, then and I do have an index of just the icons so that I can search things by the icon rather than by keyword. So those are things that I draw. I also print things out, especially now that I have a color printer. You can't stop me. So I've got, well, I didn't print this one out, but I've got a garden section and I've got seed information and pictures from the seed catalog for things that I actually grow. I've been working on a memory journey, as like Lynn Kelly explains in the memory code and the memory craft, where you walk a particular path and you establish memories to keep at those spots. And like her, I'm doing a historical one, but I'm focused on philosophy specifically. But anyway, just as to have something to mark 500 BC, I've got the statue of Ve, the Apollo of Ve, and I've got a picture of it. This is not really something that's all that important, but there's not a whole lot happening historically in 500 BC, so this is what we got to mark the spot. But it was useful to print out that image of this statue so that I could remember it more easily. And also, I think because I do visual arts, I think is part of why I like putting so much of these imagery in. I do have a section that's out of date, but I'm working on it with my own artwork where I've got just a quick thumbnail image of different pieces so that I can keep track of them. Some of them, might be in shows, some of them might be for sale, some of them might have actually been sold, and that's how I keep track of that stuff.
Mm.
Some of them have prints in various locations that are for sale. So yeah, try to keep track of those things that way.
Are you going to put a link to your catalog in the library?
Oh, I don't have an online catalog. I've got actually technically the place that I did have prints went out of business, so I got those prints back, and they haven't been put anyplace else since then. I'm very much an amateur artist. This is not super fancy stuff, but it's fun. But my biggest experiment lately is again with the memory techniques, where you create mental images to try and remember things. Well, I've been also sketching those mental images down onto cards. I'm working on memorizing a poem in Latin, and I don't know Latin, so this is very much I have to put in prompts to remind me of what particular words are there and what do they sound like, because I don't necessarily know what they're saying. I've got an idea. I've looked up, some of these, so I have a rough idea of what it's saying, but definitely not the details. So here is an example of one of the cards for one, or actually for two lines of the poem.
Oh.
And the panda driving the car is to remind me of the and last two words there, pandere caris. So there's a lot I could get into all the details. It's all very idiosyncratic, but that's what makes it memorable. So I've got tons of these cards as I work through memorizing this one. This one, you've got an elephant zapping a quail with an atom, and the quail is pouring water out. And there's a rabbit eating linguine. And this is all to help me remember the Latin words. But doing pictures is sort of obvious, if you have a visual bent to want to do things that way. But can we push things any further? Like, what would it take to, or if would we want to create like sound? Because I was working on this. Like, you could like tape a SD card with a sound recording on it, but then that means that whoever's looking at it later would have to have a card reader and the ability to read it, and it hasn't gotten corrupted, and and there's like those recorded greeting cards where you open them and they play a sound. Okay, you could probably get something like that could be recorded on, but okay, how long does the battery last? And so there's a lot of difficulties. And I guess, why would you want to go to the trouble? So I don't know. Any thoughts?
Yeah, why would you want to? I'm not assuming the answer is no. I'm assuming you might find something. Another difficulty is how do you index it? So it's not just a place that you go. Not that there's anything wrong with that. So I don't index my memory palaces. I've just got them alphabetized and I
Mhm.
know where to go to get them. But and bib cards are the same way. You just go and you find the bib card, and it's not necessarily that every single point on the bib card's been indexed because that's what the main cards are for. Um, Thinking about how that might be handled in Roanoke, I would love to stretch the boundary even more and say, not relying on the link.
Mhm.
Ah,
I mean, the link, you could imagine something like a QR code that we have today tripping some known thing in that the link would be able to play in your head. But how could you have something on the card that trips your own auditory memory? Or I mean, I guess
Or another person's.
yes. Mhm.
Because if you were thinking of the situation of leaving a Zettelkasten for posterity, and so somebody who's not you is looking through it. Um, I mean, I've got a memory section that I'm building that I hope that at some point kids or possible grandkids might like. Who knows? That's up to them. But having, spoken stories for some of them would
Yeah.
be a really cool addition if it were something that were possible to add in a way that would last and be usable.
uh-huh. Well, it sounds like Julianne shared that with us with the Zotero, because
Mhm.
your Zotero is a short reference, which can be recorded. And with just a short string, even if it's written on a handwritten card, because the string is so short, it's not tedious to type that into the Zotero to bring up the video or the voice or whatever it was you wanted to share. Whereas, you just take a little YouTube string and it's like, you never would
Yeah.
want to, you would not want to type one of those in. So Zotero provides that link, and that could be used. I mean, it could be used now, but something
Mhm.
we could engineer a system like that in Roanoke, or the Hinge could have it.
Yeah. The Hinge could have it. And the
Was
Hinge does not let you have the link when you're inside the
That's
Hinge.
right. That's right. But when you go through when you exit through the gift shop, maybe you would get a little souvenir. The Hinge maybe could discover another quote or another thing that would be an excellent add-on to the experience you just had, so that when you exit through the gift shop, like if you those little tabs you pull for getting served, and they've got little numbers on them, on
Yeah.
your way out the door you grab the next tab, and the Hinge will give you the number, and you go home at some point in time and you look that up, and that's your message back, that some, or maybe it just even gives you a video of the, if you wanted, of the Hinge watching you have your experience.
I mean, the oral tradition teaches one song to another person,
Yeah.
and a lot of songs are themselves mnemonic devices.
Ah,
And sometimes the same tune is used again and again and again. It's like such and such to the tune of Old
yeah.
Man River.
Right. I just keep thinking about outside the hinge or outside of Roanoke. How do we deal with the passage of time, for these things?
Yeah.
Um, the oral tradition, you're passing it down, person to person. But technologically speaking, how do we, I mean, what's the, what channel, what do we pick that won't become obsolete? Like I mean, you show a kid a black telephone, dial telephone, they say, what? What is this? They have no clue.
Yeah.
That put this thing, and that's why this gesture doesn't work for them. What are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing? So I don't know. I don't like that becomes the problem.
Yeah.
The vehicle that you use to contain the sound, how do you make sure that 3 generations down the road they can retrieve it?
Yeah.
That's the question.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in oral cultures, part of it is that is valued. It's not like you need to convince their kids you should be paying attention.
Mm,
It's like the whole world they live in
right.
operates that way. And a kid grows up seeing what works and the wisdom that has been passed on and on and on. They get an inkling of, why you should care. And this is a new to us problem where if it's not digital, it's not valued. And if it's not immediately valuable, it's not valued by certain segments. So, I mean, again, coming back to Roanoke, I feel like that is a lesson that the parental figures are trying to give to their kids and reestablish.
Uh-huh.
So I just had an idea for Roanoke. We've already got the sort of self-inserting ink pens where if you need to add a line of text before it, it automatically erases and rewrites everything to make space. Well, that same technology could be used to do like a sort of animation, like even stick figure animation.
Uh-huh.
Um, you could, if there were something that would be a way of imitating a video on a note card of having a little animation on it.
Yep.
Something that we could maybe find a use for.
Yep.
There's that flip card scenario thing,
Yep.
Mhm.
that I remember when I was a kid and I first saw that, I was so enthralled.
Yeah.
I was so, I just kept doing it over and over and over and over again, watching, the little, and so, and I was thinking about the gift shop as well. And you get that ticket, it becomes, because what do you go to the gift shop for? A souvenir,
Uh-huh.
right? So there would be this bespoke souvenir waiting for you on the other side, um, that would always, like a tagline, bring that whole thing, that whole experience back to you,
Yeah.
just looking at it or just engaging with that souvenir.
Oh, so it should probably be visual and not just a number that triggers to a database somewhere.
Oh,
It
yeah.
could maybe be like one of Mel's cards that he showed us where he's, with the little rabbit eating linguine. And you look at the rabbit eating linguine and that triggers something, the triggers something that will bring that whole experience back for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, one of the things with memory images is somebody, if Mel handed out his cards for the poem, those images are probably not going to work for us.
Correct. Yeah.
So I think the same would be true for these souvenirs. It has to be a suggestion that inspires the person who went to the henge to do their own work.
Yeah. Yeah. Flip the card over and make their own image.
Yeah.
You know, that this is just a reminder that you need to do this.
Yeah. I mean, there are the symbols
Mhm.
that are markers on the pathways that you followed.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's some interesting, I mean, the whole animation of that would show you where you stayed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. You know, that flip card thing is in one of the stories that happens in the first act. It's just referenced when Sonny is looking through Millie's Zettelkasten, and Millie taught him how to use a Zettelkasten as a kid. And in the story, he's using ways to figure out this gigantic Zettelkasten. Where do I even start? Where are some patterns I might find? And he finds some patterns, but he's also kind of hoping that he'll find a pattern like what Millie created for him when he was a kid, which is flipping through the cards
Uh-huh.
and seeing a little picture of a little boy on a skateboard skating around on the cards.
Uh-huh.
And he's hoping she left it that clearly.
Oh, maybe she actually left those very cards.
She might have.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, very good.
So what else? Mel, what other kinds of things besides the audio and the animation did, did you have other specific things that you were wondering?
I was just wondering how far how far we could push it. Yeah, I mean, you could add some smells. At least they'd last for a little while. And like Kathleen has written about characters that have kept object Zettelkastens, and we can do that even on our paper ones, like pressed plants. If you were trying to learn or study plants and identify them, you could add that.
Yeah.
There's a lot that could be done as far as adding physical objects to the cards, as long as it wasn't so thick that it made it hard to keep them
Yeah.
together.
And the Lucasa can step in
Mhm.
some of those cases too.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, well, knitters, crocheters, embroiderers sometimes keep little notebooks of the stitches that they've learned in the patterns. They'll make a
Mhm.
little square, crochet or knit, and then the instructions for how to do the pattern.
Mhm. And that could be kept in a Zettelkasten.
Mhm.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Keep thinking about that the science fiction thing called smell-o-vision. Remember?
Yes. Yeah. Well,
Smell-o-vision. Yeah.
yeah. Our esteemed colleague Victoria has shared stories about a relationship between colors and smells for her,
Mm,
kind of a olfactory synesthesia.
right.
And maybe that's something that could be leveraged.
Mm.
Read this card and you'll taste a strawberry.
Wow.
Well, it's definitely a lot to think about and consider. Where could people go if they wanted to talk about things like this more?
You could come to LiLLiPub.org. LiLLiPub. It's where we hang out when we're not here in YouTube land. We have a whole section called Roanoke where we talk about these themes. And you can also come join the general discussions in the library. Victoria's new book is out, and everybody's excited about sharing that. So if you're reading her book, you'll certainly want to come over to LiLLiPub and share that. Mel has his group for his newsletter out there, and I think Deb even has something up her sleeve that she'll tell us more about later. Julianne
Later, yeah.
conducting us in Roanoke. So come on over to lillipub.org.
Great. See you all next time.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good night.